I'm very happy, as already Margarita said. A lot of Agile coaches have joined the session, a lot of Scrum Masters, and a lot of other roles, which is also perfectly fine. And let's move directly into the content. Yeah? As you are already quite familiar with, COVID-19 crisis changed the way we work. Mobility is heavily reduced, and the connectivity, especially the digital one, is increased a lot. And the issue is Agile is all about working together. I mean, the main idea of Agile in the very first, let's say, movement was that teams should be collaborate more in a kind of task force mode. Yeah? So this has actually some characteristics. It's about strong focus. It's about close interaction, collaboration. It's about intensive synchronization between the different team members. It's about haptic artifacts. It's about visualization, fast delivery of results. So Agile is all about working together in some kind of task force mode. And the issue is this is especially difficult when being apart, yeah? When being distributed, when being physically dispersed. And that's why we want to talk today about actually two main enablers. Yeah? And we divided the enablers for working remotely together in a good fashion into actually two categories, because very often we switch or we jump into tools and infrastructure very soon. I mean, tools and infrastructure are very important, and we will come to that a little bit later. But it's also very important that people and processes are, let's say, tailored or customized to working together in a remote way. So we will spend, let's say, the first half of our session on people and processes, and not dive or jump into tools and infrastructure at the very first place, because we believe that we can do a lot of improvement in people and processes at the very first set. So then let's start. And I will start, and my two colleagues from Erste Group will then jump in with their experiences. And I think that the very first thing we would like to highlight is that it is very important that you as a team, or you as a Scrum Master or Agile coach or project manager, you have to have a self-confidence, yeah? to claim autonomy for your decisions. Yeah? If you are in a setup where you kind of have to let's say to do this and that, and in order to facilitate the way the team is actually collaborating in a good fashion, it is necessary to have autonomy for decisions. So it's very important that you define the constraints with your sponsors that you have to meet, yeah? Because if you don't, or if you aren't allowed to decide on anything, for example, on tooling, on the meeting schedule, on probably just some simple things like that, yeah, it's very hard to establish a way of working that really fits to the team, to the very specific needs of the team. So my first hint is let's go for this self-confidence, claim autonomy for your decisions, in order that you are not, let's say, tied very neatly, so that you aren't able to do anything. Yeah? So that's very important that you have the autonomy. The second thing is, of course, that you need strong and ambitious visions, because visions are kind of they facilitate the way that the team is actually moving. And while visions are already quite important for any team out in the world, it is especially important for remote working teams, because it's more difficult to stay on the same path, yeah? Because you are physically dispersed, and there is not this let's say close bond that helps people bond together in order to stay on track. So you have to talk about the vision again and again, in order to make sure that every of the team members is aware where actually the team is heading to. And this implies a lot on let's say the leadership. Yeah? For the leadership, the primary goal is to create a community, and this is way more difficult for a remote working team than for a team that is co-located in one office together. And you can create this community by, let's say, accelerating and increasing communications, because all the informal ways, all the informal channels are less established when people are not sitting in office together. There is not this situation where you bump into another colleague on the aisle or in the kitchen, and all this informal communication that is so important in the office. You have to be aware that it's much more tricky to ensure such kind of communication when people are working remotely, everyone in his own location. And you have to make sure that you have a clear structure or a kind of reliability set by using procedure and processes, because in a normal office setting, there's, for example, the kind of ritual that in the morning half of the team is having coffee together, and this is all not possible when people are working remotely. And that's why we need procedures and processes that are very transparent, in order that you have daily routines that are kind of repeated and repeated and repeated and over again. So this kind of schedule is very important in order to get people, let's say, bond together, and that every part of this team is staying on track. And it's also very important for a leader to express thank you quite explicitly. In the office, this is done, let's say, quite in a short way, when you thank a colleague for helping someone, for supporting and doing a task. And this is some kind of a reminder that this has to happen also when people are working remotely together, because it's often let's say not so common to do this in comparison to an office setting. So there is a need for inspiring leadership, and as a leader you have to make sure that you create a community by communication, by procedure and processes, and by let's say giving feedback and giving appreciation on a daily routine. Yeah, that's very important. And another important point where Alexandra want to join and jump in, I hope now it's working for you to speak to the group, is about clear roles and responsibilities. It's already tricky enough for a team that is together in a co-located setting to have a clear definition of the roles and of the expectations, who is doing what, who is responsible for what. And it's even more important when working together in a remote setup, because when there is something missed, then it's far more easier in a remote setup that the task is getting lost or is not done anyway. Yeah? So we do recommend that you do some kind of role and expectation workshops, yeah, where you talk quite regularly about who is doing what, who has which focus, and how we are working also together, and what also are our values for collaborating actually together. Alexandra, do you want to jump in? Are you able to?
Yeah. I hope it's working now. I'm now off the phone, so let's see. I should stuck to the thing that I'm used to. So welcome everyone, now also with the voice, not just a picture. And since Margarita already said everything about Erste, I don't have to add anything at all. So a nice way to turn around this one. What I wanted to point out, there are two things. First of all, preparation is key for an on-site setting, but even more for an off-site setting. So off or online setting, take it this way. You have to do it a couple of times in your mind before you actually go to facilitate in a virtual setting. And on the other hand, when you're doing it, so when you're having a discussion, try to visualize everything. So everything that is said, use any kind of whiteboard tool that you have at hand. and try to create the transparency on what is being talked about for the whole audience. So I do this quite a lot, and there are a couple of tools out there that can be used for this one. It's helping getting really to the point. And Christoph mentioned the ground rules, so the team agreements and these kind of things. So this could be, for example, something in the team agreements to state, okay, whenever we have a collaboration online, then we just document. And it's not just transparency within the team, it's also transparency outside of the team with regards to sponsors, leaders, managers. And I think, Margarita, you want to continue with that one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Alexandra. I'm happy that you could join back. And just to add a little bit, because I didn't manage to say everything about Erste Group yet, maybe it's worth saying that for those of you who don't know our bank, since I've seen we're quite international group today, and it's we operate mainly in the Central Eastern Europe, so we operate in 7 countries. So even before COVID happened, we have a lot of initiatives, projects and activities which we do cross-border. And therefore we work with a lot with distributed teams, not just because of COVID right now. Now, of course, we have the pleasure to work even more. If I can jump in that, from my experience, I really like how you, Christoph, said it's people, and then we also have processes, and then we have tools. For me, it's all about the people in the end of the day, whether we are successful to work remote or not. From my experience, of course, remote working and following these elements, what Christoph just showed us, is working quite well with mature teams. But it can be very challenging for new teams and for dysfunctional teams, especially in their communication, as Alexandra mentioned, with the outside of the team. When COVID came, to be honest, from my experience, this was a huge test for many of our teams. Are we really a team or just a group of people? Yeah, and it was a huge test. Do we really know each other? Do we really trust each other? Do we understand towards what vision we are going to? Do we understand our roles and responsibilities? And if you don't have a good vision, if you have problems in communication internally, outside of the team, as Alexandra pointed, if you have misalignments or any kind of miscommunication, then working remote is the least of the problems. Yeah, it is many further deeper things that can pop up, and this remote working and distributed teams make very visible. Of course, mature teams work much better together because they know each other, right? They should know each other. They're used to each other. They know each other's strengths and weaknesses. For me, even better than mature teams work agile mature teams because agile teams are smaller. They have much faster communication lines between the members. They're used to work with ambiguity. They're used to change. That's why they were founded, to embrace change, right? So switching them remote or face-to-face back to remote and having them work in let's say distributed mode, from my experience as a coach, is not that of a challenge if you have all of these elements which Christoph shared. To go more concretely, I would like to point out the leadership moment here. So going back to the picture before on leadership, yes, 3 roles come to my mind when I see this picture. One is the role of product owner. Another one is the role, of course, of the agile coach and the top management, or any key visionaries or top stakeholders that can support the teams. And why is this important? For me, roles like product owner or agile coach, they should not be specific to agile. they're super helpful for any kind of distributed team, no matter what working method this distributed team uses. Because yes, you need a role who can support the team with reinforcing the vision, who can energize the team around that vision, who can inspire the people around that vision, who can be very concrete on the direction we are going into. Super helpful, not just in agile setting, in distributed setting, in any kind of setting. On the agile coaching role or scrum master, it definitely being obliged or having to work remote is impacting our connectivity. It's impacting how we approach each other. And of course, it can have a negative, so to say, energy towards how well we agree on things, how well we brainstorm together, how creative we are. Simply when we work remotely, we miss each other. I think all of us have experienced that in the past months, that we simply miss some of our colleagues, our teams. We miss the coffee talks in the kitchen. We miss the beer nights out with the team. It's not so easy anymore. And this missing each other impacts how we also work, how we brainstorm, how creative we are, how energetic we are, how proactive we are in the tasks that we have to work on. And that's why if you have distributed teams, it's really worth investing in a role which can support you with facilitation, which can support the team with simply keeping their mental health up and running, keeping the energy up, and guiding the team in their discussions, facilitating conversations. This is really, really important. And as many of you know, this is really part of our job as agile coaches or scrum masters. And last but not least, as Alexandra mentioned, management. It is very important for distributed teams to constantly be reminded, where are we going to? Well, what do we need to achieve? What is the value that we need to deliver? To validate that, with each other. To have this very natural line of validation without having these very complex steering meetings or reviews which happen only once somewhere in some weeks, but having more natural sparring partnership line to their management. And we have, let's say, experience in that if you have management which is open, which is out there, which acts as sparring partners, not just the steering committee, is really helpful for distributed teams to be focused, be enthusiastic, and be energetic in what they need to do and how they're gonna do it.
Yeah, thanks for your input. That's great, because I can truly build on it, because you were talking about missing each other, yeah? And it might be such a kind of simple thing, yeah? But I would like to highlight on this actually on this study. Yeah, it was conducted by Google, where they let's say wanted to figure out what are the main let's say characteristic of an high performant team, yeah? And the top reason for becoming an high performing team, at least at Google, but I believe this is so true for any other organization, is that teams or team members have a kind of psychological safety, yeah? That everyone of the team members feels safe in order to let's say communicate his ideas, yeah, to communicate feedback, yeah, and this is so difficult to establish when the team is distributed. Yeah? I think it's probably easier if you at least start all together, yeah? Where you have this kind of socializing parts in the kitchen, at night, yeah, when going out for having some drinks, yeah, and trust is key, yeah, and it's very difficult to establish. So you have to think about, as a facilitator of this team, of how to create actually this bond that people are connecting together. And it's also, I mean, I can add on this in terms of communication, yeah, it's essential, yeah. And it's about so simple ideas of asking open questions. Yeah, try to avoid yes no questions. Everyone knows that. Yeah, for a remote setup, yeah, you ask in a video conference, or even more terrible, let's say, in a telephone conference. Yeah, do you agree? And there's just a yes coming, yeah, or just a no, yeah, and you have no clue what is actually being the message about this, or this underlying message behind this yes or no. And it's also very, let's say, necessary to include quiet people, yeah, that don't talk if not asked. Yeah? That's so important, because otherwise you are always, let's say, including the very same people that are speaking all the time. Yeah? And what we use, and I think you at Erste, you use it too, is this kind of the circle way, which is quite, let's say, familiar, or is quite often used in a setting where all of the people are in one room together. But you can use this same method also in a video call or in a telephone conference call. And it is about going team member by team member, and everyone has the chance to give his or her opinion on the topic that is currently discussed. Yeah? And the check-in and check-out processes that are typically tied to this method, yeah, where you ask, for example, how do you feel today, yeah, in order to start the meeting. And I think it's even more important than during this actual Corona crisis. And then, for example, if Marianne starts, she will hand over to Alexander, who is then hand over the mic to Carl. And so it is possible that everyone can raise his or her voice in order to communicate and state his or her opinion on the matter that is discussed. And this is very key. And I think you use it as well at the Erste Group. Yeah?
Yes.
Good. Yeah. Or a bit. Would you like to jump in, or should I move on?
It's just confirming. Yes, we use this method. There is also this circle, and we also, Alexandra will confirm, we use the method of passing virtual ball, which is usually quite exciting because you know it probably from face to face. We use it in virtual as well. It creates attention in the session because you never know the virtual ball, and it also kind of makes you pay more attention who was before you, right? So that you don't mention someone else for the second time. It's a bit awkward, and it also works, by the way, if you don't know the other people in the session, or if you meet them for the first time. It also helps you because you search for their name, right? Because you need to name someone. So it works quite well, and I can really recommend it. From my experience, works great, and it gives equal chance for everyone to join in, to make a statement, to share their idea without creating extraordinary pressure on the people.
Yeah, true. Very, very true. And I think it's that's also one thing I would like to share. It's about the media richness of the different methods of collaborating together or using tools. Yeah? You have to be aware that you have different channels. Yeah? And of course, face-to-face is where you have a lot of, or a high media richness. Yeah? You can transmit here not only words, you can transmit tone, volume, mimics, gestics, and all this kind of stuff. And the more you go on the left, yeah, you lose a lot of information. For example, the instant messenger is just words. Yeah, there is no tone, there is no volume. Yeah, probably if you use some kind of emoticons, then it's a little bit more, let's say, visible how people feel. But the idea is, the more sensitive the topic is, you should go more on the right hand side. Yeah? And if you are not able to meet face to face, it could be video conferences. Yeah? If you have a good video conference system, video conferencing tool, it's let's say with a high resolution, you can see how actually other people are reacting on the things you actually say. So it's key that you don't discuss everything on instant messenger, yeah? Because you can there is so much, let's say, potential of conflict there in getting the message wrong. And you have to be aware of that. And another thing that I would like to share is, I call it this idea and a kind of heartbeat. Yeah? You have to make sure that you have a heartbeat in your team. Yeah? And the heartbeat means that you have some kind of peaks where you meet together, where you get the full, let's say, the full bandwidth of information from your colleagues, for example, by video conferences, yeah, where you see each other, where you see how is the mood of your colleagues and so on. And then, of course, you have some smaller peaks, yeah, where you're working together, where everyone is focused, working on his or her own stuff and own tasks and working packages. Of course, there are sometimes discussions where the peak is probably a little bit higher. But again, everyone will know that there is a peak up front. Yeah? For example, if we have our weekly sure fix next Monday. Yeah? But it is key to establish that, because otherwise people are moving apart from each other, yeah? and simply get lost over time. Yeah? And that's what we definitely want to avoid. Yeah, participative decision-making processes, probably this adds on the circle way. Everyone should have a voice, and there are different kind of tools you can use. Yeah, you can use highly sophisticated tools. There is one, Acceptify. It's actually an Austrian startup that provides a tool that facilitates this, let's say, decision-making processes in a very sociocratic way. But you can use also a kind of simpler tool, the Fists of Five, where five is full commitment, full agreement to the, let's say, to the proposal. And one is about, I'm probably not a very big fan of it, and I think there's the fist missing. Actually, that is blocking. It's a kind of veto where the decision is blocked, but you cannot simply block the decision, because you have to come with another proposal, yeah, or with some recommendations or ideas to change the proposal that is on hand. So it is important that everyone has a voice, that you use participative decision-making process, and there is a lot of bandwidth. I mean, the Fist of Five, you can even do this in the instant messenger, although I might not recommend it, because as I said already, there you lose a lot of let's say, information about how people actually feel when they are presenting their opinion. Yeah, I have a few more items that we would like to share, and then we will close the section on people and processes. I think very important is also this kind of remote pairing. I mean, pair programming and pair, let's say, working is quite heavily used in Agile team setups, and it's important to, let's say, to keep this practice running when working remotely together. You can partner with a colleague also by video, by using modern tools in order to, let's say, collaborate quite intensively together in order to ensure first knowledge transfer, and second, of course, also that you bond together with each other. I think that's a very important point to, let's say, to continue this practice of pairing. Another thing I did once in one of my teams was there are tools available that measure, let's say, the daily happiness metric. Every of the team members get an kind of email, an automatic email, where they can just click on one of the 3 smileys, and then as a Scrum Master on the next day in the morning, you get the kind of summary of the results. Because it's so difficult when you are apart, yeah, to sense all these little conflicts and this kind of, let's say, who is in what mood and all this kind of stuff. It's so difficult, and of course you can use such tools in order to help you identify if a team is, let's say, has a decreasing mood, yeah, because they're unhappy about whatever. Yeah? Yeah, give kudos. I mentioned it already before. It's about giving appreciation, and you can there also use tools. Yeah, for example, this kudo box, yeah, where you can give a thank you, whatever, to your colleagues. Yeah, it's so nice if this is introduced, because it's a mutual appreciation between or among the team members, and it requires really little effort. Just a few minutes probably every day, and it decreases, let's say, the team atmosphere and the team, let's say, the team spirit a lot. Yeah? And I can advise you to do some of this. And of course, what is also possible is the remote coffee break, remote after work beer. I mean, before Corona, this was kind of rather strange. Now we are people getting used to it. And I think it's a nice way to come together and also share meal or whatever together in a video conference setup, in order to increase the team spirit. And the very last one, we did some visuals on what to do in remote. I mean, both are in German, but nevertheless, many of you speak German. So yeah, please take a look. Please use it for your teams. And I would like to once choose or use the opportunity to hand over to you, Alexandra and Margarita, if you want to share another few practices from your experience.
Okay, well, I could start with preparation again, since I'm quite passionate about this one. Meaning, before you even start on facilitating for a distributed team, think of what's the purpose of the workshop, the meeting that you're going to have online, and what's the audience, because this heavily depends on which tool can you use, which method can you use. And we just figured out that the higher up in the hierarchy, usually the more straightforward and easy to use it should be. So no logins and no account creation up front. And don't gold plate your, I don't know, boards that you're using, for example, because it's just confusing for the team members not being used to it. So within a team, it can become business as usual. But if you do it with an audience that is not so familiar and working together, then I would rather go for keep it smart, keep it simple, and make it easy to use and fast to understand, because it's just a tool to help you get some content across. And another thing that was already mentioned as well are the team rules, the ground rules, and there is also some these Elmo cards from the superpowers, so super collaboration powers, I think it's called, Margarita, right? I always get it wrong. And I would have needed this kind of card before with I'm mute and I can't talk because my connection is lost or my picture is frozen. So you can simply use these cards like enough, let's move on, for example. The LMO abbreviation stands for this one. So without saying anything, as long as you use video, of course, to simply show the other participants what you think, without being too, let's say, too impolite, just jumping in while someone is talking. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it from my side. The nomination tool has been mentioned. So Margarita, what else do you have for us?
Well, first of all, I definitely agree with you. Preparation is key. So I can back you up 100% there. And I see they have it also. Christoph is showing it on the screen as well as a point. Just to add on that, when COVID kind of pushed us to work more and more remote and to have to be distributed, a lot of fancy tools for virtual collaboration started popping up. And I see some of your posting as well examples of those. It's great that we have them, but from our experience, don't forget to check in advance before your meeting, before your event, with the participants, whether they have access to those tools and whether they can work with those tools. Don't count on the first 10 minutes or 5 minutes in your meeting. Always check in advance with the participants whether they can join those tools, whether they can use them, do they understand them, and invest time in that. It's really worth it. Otherwise, you lose enormous amount of time of, did you log in? Do you see it? Can you click here? And investigating how to use the tool, which simply derails the focus of the people somewhere else and not on the purpose. As Alexandra mentioned, the purpose of your meeting or session is what counts. We had recently, and I have some of the colleagues on the calls who did that. We have very frequently online events nowadays, and we really booked 5 minutes with the participants, short call before the event, checking, okay, this is the tool we're going to use. Can you access it? Maybe they cannot access it because of security issues, because of browser issues, whatever can pop up. And investing those just 5 minutes, very simple, can save your entire meeting. In addition to that, I have to say that one thing changed tremendously, and this is the fact that we don't anymore see the same thing. If before we were sitting together in a meeting room face to face, we were looking at the same whiteboard, right, or the same flip chart. Now we are all remote. Someone is joining from the phone. Another person is joining from the tablet. Another person has 2 screens, desktop, laptop, whatever. We don't anymore see the same. Not underestimate that. Once I was in a session where the moderator designed the whole activity program with the assumption of 2 screens. So he was very nicely flipping through the tools that we need to use. And I, poor me, sitting with a laptop 13-inch screen, I had to constantly minimize, maximize windows in order to catch up with the speed he was moderating the session. Guess that my experience as a participant was not so high. So always count on the fact that now people use different devices, they see different things, probably they work with different browsers, they work with different screens, and this can ruin potentially your intentions for the meeting organization. Last advice point from my side is related to the time to socialize. Open your calls or meetings a little bit earlier. Leave this 5-10 minutes time when you come in the meeting room, you put your laptop or your back on the table, you see how the others are doing, and chat with each other. I always leave the call open also during any breaks. If we have longer events or trainings, the calls are always open. So even if we have coffee break or lunch, people go in the kitchen, grab the coffee, they come back and they chat with the other participants. Super valuable, super inspiring, and so simple. Of course, you mentioned it already, check-ins, icebreakers, something that is fun, something that warms our hearts. And it doesn't need to be some fancy tool. Again, it can be just a question. Yeah, how are you today? It can be just what's the weather, or where do you call from? These things are so simple, but they're super important for us to feel again humans face to face, talking to each other. And I see that now you're recording the session, also great thing, and this we couldn't do before, and I like it and I use it as well. You don't need to record the whole session of your meetings, of course, because let's be honest, who is going to watch that? Otherwise, if you start recording all of your meetings, this is no interest for anyone. But what I find valuable is to record, for instance, the next steps or the main outcomes of our session. So if you don't have someone valuable on the meeting because he's in another meeting or whatever, you can just send them this recording later or have it for your documentation.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing. I never thought of recording the decisions, but it's a nice idea. Yeah? It's really a nice idea. And yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah? I mean, we already dipped a little bit into tooling. Yeah? And let's be honest. Yeah, we are a little bit behind schedule. So we quickly will go through tools, because I mean, tools is all about let's say trying to experiment with them. Yeah, so we will give you some of the tools we use, and it's you have to take the time to try them. Yeah. So anyway, so infrastructure and tools, as already mentioned, of course, infrastructure is also key. Yeah? I mean, you have to work on people and processes, but if infrastructure is bad, yeah, it couldn't save anything. Yeah? So you need video conferencing, screen sharing, professional tools, chat tools, visualization tools, and it's also very important. And in many organizations, this is still a little bit lagging behind. You have to connect from everywhere. Yeah? It's about a mobile worker. Yeah? You have to work from the cafe, from your home, from everywhere. Yeah? And I think it's feasible with all the security tools that are nowadays available. So the very first one is the modern chat tools. Yeah? I mean, they are really booming right now. I think a lot of organizations are switching to MS Teams, to Microsoft Teams. We already use it since 2.5 years or something like that. And we completely eliminated every internal only mail. Yeah? You really get rid of many emails, yeah? Because you simply don't need them anymore. And it's very interesting that we connect with more and more clients also connecting our MS Team instances, and it really will probably revolutionize the way we work together, because emails it's quite old school. Actually, it's an electronic version of a mail, yeah? That was sent already hundreds of years ago. Yeah? So modern chat tools are definitely key. Electronic task boards are as well a very useful tool in order to get a visualization of what is happening in the team, who is working on what is the prioritization of the items, of the working items we have in the backlog. And I do recommend, and it's not that I like Microsoft that much, but they have actually kind of a good suite right now. Yeah, I think they are kind of good in, let's say, in developing, let's say, from the best, to learn from the best and developing by themselves. Yeah, so we have Microsoft Teams, which is quite the same now as Slack. Yeah, you have the Microsoft Planner. It's probably not the same as Trello. Has a little bit less features, but it's integrated. You can use it if you have the Office 365 package. And the whiteboard, it's actually right now the features are really very bare minimum. There are a lot of better whiteboards, but again, it's included in the package. Try to use it, and I think they are implementing feature by feature, as they of course already got to know that Miro and Mural are quite famous tools right now. So they try to develop their whiteboard so that it's more fancier. Yeah, video conferencing. I think right now many of us are using the built-in ones. Yeah? Microsoft Teams has one, Slack has one. Of course, you can use Zoom or Jitsi. It's an open source tool that are dedicated video conferencing tools. But it is key that you use some of these modern tools. Another thing that might be possible, and I tried them already in our office. We have a smart board. I found one hotel where I give regular trainings. They have this Samsung flip chart, which is kind of nice. Yeah? It's like an endless flip chart, yeah. Because if you finish the flip chart, you just move it up, and then you have a new one, and it's a nice idea. And I think Google Jamboard. It's actually a collaboration between Google and the TV manufacturer that you use Jamboard. It's a whiteboard tool of Google and in collaboration together with NTV. Yeah? So try it. I think they are worth at least in trying, if it's feasible to work with them in your team. As we are already mentioned, there are a lot of online whiteboard tools, corkboard tools. Yeah, I think the most famous ones are Mural, Miro. There is also Scrambler and Whiteboard Fox. So you have you have a lot of different opportunities. And what we discussed actually in preparing this session with you guys from Erste Group is you have to select the right tool for the right audience. Yeah? I think, Margarita, you will share afterwards a tool you like to use, especially with large groups, because Miro is quite complex, yeah, and Mural. Yeah? If you use it the first time, sometimes some people get overwhelmed by the huge opportunities that these tools are able. Yeah? And they also change very often. Yeah, I think Miro has some kind of new features every 2 weeks. Yeah, I mean it's definitely a perfect example of continuous delivery. But if you are a user, it's sometimes quite difficult if there are new things and you probably randomly click on something and something is happening then you aren't familiar with. So Jamboard, for example, at Google, it's way more simple. Yeah? If you have just a simple retrospective where people are putting post-it notes on the whiteboard, you can use, for example, that. Yeah? It's not very sophisticated, but it's very easy to use. Let's say there is no difficulties to work with that tool. Yeah, there are of course some tools that are dedicated especially for retrospectives for Agile teams. We selected here 3 of them. I was working at least with 2 of them. They have all kinds of retrospectives. No? The starfish retrospective, all the different formats you might expect. So they can give you also a good hint on what doing or what kind of method you should doing next, because they have many templates that you can choose from. Yeah? Of course, Mentimeter, it's very nice. I mean, we used it also today. For example, I use it a lot in commitment. Yeah? If you have a large group and you want to check the commitment, I really use it for a confidence vote. Yeah? For example, from 1 to 10, how confident are you in achieving the results or in committing the things we discussed? Yeah? And you can really get a very fast sense if the team is overwhelmed by the things that are discussed, or if everyone is fine with the proposal that is on hand. IOBEA, I won't go too deep on that, but even for the most comprehensive visualization, yeah, there are tools available. Yeah? It's amazing. I've never tried IOBEA before, to be honest, but one of my clients is actually using it. And they have implemented a lot, for example, from the SAFe framework, yeah? For example, the value stream mapping. So you can do really, let's say, very complex dashboards and putting all the things together. So there is no excuse that tools aren't available to do such, let's say, comprehensive stuff and more complex stuff, actually. What we did in our company, especially during the very first time in March and April, where we were, let's say, strongly put apart, is that we wrote at the very end of the day what we achieved on this day, yeah? To also let's say it's about mutual appreciation. Yeah, who is working on what, who is achieving what. There are also tools available. I done this. It's actually drops you an email in the afternoon where you write your 5 bullet points on what you have achieved today, and it's actually summarizing the content and then push out all the content to every one of the team members. Yeah? So it's about getting to know who is working on what, and this actually is kind of nice. Yeah, we reduced actually the interval right now to it's more like a once per week thing right now in our company. But again, try it out, try this and check what's it actually doing with your team members. I think Padlet, this is the tool you wrote into, Margarita, and you use it a lot. Probably you would like to share what it is good for,
yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, we use Miro and Padlet quite heavily for brainstorming discussions, ideation, especially when it comes to our design thinking practices, workshops as well. Both are very good. My favorite is Miro from the two, because Miro, as you said, it has a lot of stuff inside, and it allows you also to define the structure that you need for your purpose in the meeting. However, because Miro has so many things inside, you're absolutely right. It can be super overwhelming for many people, especially if you use it for large events. We tried to use Miro for 150 plus people event. It worked fine, but it was overwhelming. So it's quite stable as a system, but overwhelming from the functionalities. Padlet is much simpler. However, also a lot more static, and it comes with a ready structure. So you can use Padlet, for instance, if you have, how we use it, if we have a brainstorming session on, let's say, 3-4 questions, you post them in Padlet and people can comment as answers to this question. So in the end of the day, it's very good for ideation as well. But as I mentioned, compared to Miro, Padlet has its own built-in structure. And if your purpose fits to that structure, then it's great. If not, Miro really gives you the opportunity to define and describe whatever you need and be as colorful as you need it. Therefore, we use Padlet if we have smaller discussions, simpler discussions. It's good for large audience to check their opinion on some questions. It doesn't require login. I saw that there was some question on tools which do they require login. Padlet is one where you can just share the link to your participants and they can enter without the necessity to create their own accounts.
Yeah, cool. And of course, there are many other tools. There are I took here free. Actually, I took in here 3 links where there are even more links, even more tools. I think some of them even provide 30 more tools. And there should be a tool that fits for their own context, as you mentioned, Margarita. You have to also think about what is the context of your meeting. What does it require? Is it more comprehensive, then probably go for Miro, Mural, or whatever. If it's more, probably more just a short meeting or many participants, you should probably use a much more simpler tool, also without login. Yeah, I mean, if you work with 100 people, there is an issue if everyone has to register. Yeah, definitely. And there is nothing more, let's say, frustrating when you want to start a meeting, as we did today in a few 1 hour ago, and there's something not working. Yeah? That's an issue. And of course, some of the tools cost money. For example, Miro also costs money if you want to have the full extension of the feature set. But then, and it's quite interesting, they added the feature of also not requiring a login. Yeah? So if you have a paid account in Miro, then you have the option that all the others that want to work with you don't require a login. Yeah? So they are also improving, of course. They want to adapt to the needs and the requirements of their let's say, of their audience. Yeah? And before we go into the breakout session, we are already, we are quite good, let's say, neat in time. Probably not good in time, but neat in time. Before we go to the breakout sessions, is there anything you want to share, Alexandra and Margarita, to let's say end this part of tools and infrastructure? Yeah, what do you use at Erste? What is helpful? Yeah, apart from Miro and Padlet.
Okay, well, I can contribute what I'm using with one of my Agile teams. So an Agile team that I'm part of, basically, and we're using everything that is in Teams, meaning starting from Planner, where we do real planning sessions, and also on the go everyday check-in at the daily. We use the chat, of course, heavily, and one nice feature is also the wiki, which we use as a log for the reviews. For example, if someone cannot participate to the review, you can either record it or you just put the content in the wiki and have it there, and you can always get back to it. And it's built in, it's easy, it doesn't have that many features, but that's okay. And same applies for the whiteboard. If you are in a call and you just want to draw or write something and collaborate ad hoc, then just open the meeting function and go to the MS Whiteboard and start using it. So no one needs to change any device or change any browser or anything. It's just built in, and this is something that I use quite frequently when I do, as I said at the very beginning, visualize everything.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah.
Cool.
And of course, there is also, for example, for really distributed teams, Jira and Confluence. I mean, it hasn't been mentioned so far, but the Atlassian tool suite is also for, especially for real techie teams. This is a really good way of collaborating and documenting things.
That's true. That's true. Definitely. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. And as we already outlined at the very beginning, we would like not only share our input and expertise and experience, we want to collect yours as well. Yeah? And therefore, we prepared breakout sessions, and we would like to invite you to go into smaller breakout teams and discuss about what other good practices do you have in mind with people and processes. Yeah? Used for distributed and remote teams. So again, there is the invitation, don't talk about infrastructure and tools that much. Yeah? I think there are a lot of other tools, and it's also important to mention them in the breakout sessions, but we heavily invite you to also talk about good practices that deal with people and processes. I have already 28 responses, so there are a lot of good hints. Actually, I'm not able to share it right now because then I have to switch devices back and forth, and as you already know, this is not happening without any issues, but we will promise that we'll export this as PDF. There are tools mentioned here. Have shorter meetings with healthy breaks, yeah, avoid full day workshops, and all these kind of inputs are in the Mentimeter. So thanks once again for participating and for entering your tips and hints. I hope you had a good session. There is just a few more information. It's kind of the advertisement block. I promise it won't take long. Yeah, we do have also a training for teams that have to work remotely together, where of course this is way more comprehensive. Where we train also the people or figure out what kind of let's say working model they need. And quite recently, I finished a paper on probably Agile in the banking industry. I did a little bit of research and wrote also about what are the current challenges. What do we get to hear from our clients, especially in the bank industry? What are their respective challenges? So please feel free to join one of our trainings or to download the white paper. And I will once again hand over to you, Margarita and Alexandra. Thank you so much for joining, for let's say spending the time, sharing your experiences was great. Thank you very much. Good. Then,
thank you as well.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to be part today of this meetup. Thanks for organizing from your side. And I would like to thank all of the people who joined us today for listening to our experience, to our tips and tricks. I hope they were a little bit at least useful for your daily work. And if you want to connect with us, please feel free to find us as well on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we will share the recording and all the slides and all the inputs that got into Mentimeter in a few days. So please stay connected with us, stay connected on meetup.com, and have a very nice evening. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.